Olympic Airlines, formerly named Olympic Airways for at least 4 decades, was the flag carrier airline of Greece with their head office in Athens. They operated services to 37 domestic destinations and to 32 destinations worldwide. Their main base was at Athens International Airport, with hubs at Thessaloniki International Airport, Macedonia, Heraklion International Airport, Nikos Kazantzakis, and Rhodes International Airport, Diagoras. Olympic Airlines also owned a base at London Heathrow International Airport. By December 2007, the airline employed about 8,500 staff. Olympic Airlines was also accredited by IATA with the IOSA for their safety practices. On March 6, 2009, the Greek state announced they had reached an agreement to sell the flight operations, ground handling operations and technical base of the group to Marfin Investment Group, the largest Greek investment fund, thus ending 35 years of state ownership. On September 29, 2009, Olympic Airlines ceased all operations and most flights. Olympic Air, the new airline formed from privatization, commenced flights. Olympic Airlines continued to operate some public service flights to Greek islands as well as some flights to destinations outside the European Union until the Greek state conducted a public tender and redistributed the routes. On December 31, 2009, Olympic Airlines ceased all operations, as flights to Greek islands have already been allocated and are being flown by other carriers, and flights to destinations outside the European Union have been allocated to other carriers who started operating them from January 1, 2010. Until the final closure, Olympic Airlines used the temporary code OP for their flights. All Olympic Airlines flights since September 29, 2009 and until the final deadline of December 31, 2009, were operated by Olympic Air on a wet lease basis. The 31 December 2009 deadline is the final possible date that Olympic Airlines should cease operations, was agreed between the Greek government and the European Commission as part of the deal to close Olympic Airlines and sell the name and assets to Olympic Air. It was initially expected that operations would end much earlier, but due to the change of government in October 2009, the public tenders for the reallocation of subsidized flights to the Greek islands and for international flight rights outside the European Union were postponed. The company stayed alive until the final deadline of December 31, 2009. History. Icarus, the first predecessor airline to Olympic, was established in 1930. After just a few months, Icarus went bankrupt due to financial problems and limited Greek interest in air transport. GCAT/IATA took its place. At the same time, in 1935, a second airline was created, the privately owned TAE. Soon after the World War II, in 1947, 3 airlines were based in Greece: TAE, GAT/IATA and Hellenic Airlines IOI, Onassis era. In 1951, the poor financial state of the 3 airlines led to a decision by the Greek state to merge them into a single operator, TAE Greek National Airlines. The new airline operated a fleet of twin-engine Douglas DC-3 airliners on domestic Greek routes until the last example was disposed of in May 1970. A 4-engine Douglas DC-4 was acquired in 1950 and this was operated on a route to London. The new airline faced financial problems, so the government closed it down in 1955. There was no buyers for the airline, so the Hellenic state bought the company back. In July 1956, the Hellenic state reached an agreement with Greek shipping magnate Aristotle Onassis for Onassis to purchase the airline. The company flew under the TAE name until the end of the year and for the first few months of 1957. On April 6, 1957, the company was renamed Olympic Airways. The new company developed rapidly. To allay the distrust of air transport by Greeks, Onassis developed the Aviation Days of 57 scheme, providing short, free flights in a DC-3 to demonstrate the reliability of air travel. In 1960, Olympic's first jet aircraft, the de Havilland Comet 4B, entered service. Olympic and British European Airways created the first code-share flights. Later the companies expanded their cooperation. When Hellenic crews had to spend a night in London, British crews would fly the Olympic comets to BEA destinations, and the same with Greek crews and BEA comets. On all BEA and OA comets, there would be a BEA Olympic sign. In 1962 Olympic set a record flying a DH Comet 4B from London to Athens in just 2 hours and 51 minutes. In 1965 Olympic ordered Boeing 707-320 jets. They received the first, bearing the name City of Athens, in 1966. Olympic's first Boeing 707 service was also the inauguration of a non-stop route connecting Athens and New York City. In 1968 Olympic began serving Africa, with a twice-weekly round-trip linking Athens with Nairobi and Johannesburg. The same year OA received the first of a fleet of Boeing 727-200 jet aircraft. A new Athens-Montreal-Chicago service commenced in 1969. Also in 1969, the airline phased out their Comet 4BS. Under Onassis leadership the airline gained a reputation for lavish style. The cabin crews were attired in Pierre Cardin-designed uniforms and passengers ate with golden cutlery and listened to the stylings of a pianist in the first-class cabin. In 1971 OA purchased new NAMC-YS-11 twin-turboprop aircraft to replace the aging non-pressurized Douglas DC-3 and the Douglas DC-6 pressurized piston-engined airliners still in use on the company's Greek domestic network. In that year they created a subsidiary airline, Olympic Aviation III 1/4 Euro to the first I+or-II registered trademark II Micron III Euro II Ishi +or-, to serve the Greek islands more economically and efficiently. To further this strategy, several examples of the small twin-engine turbo-propeller short-skivan utility airliner were obtained for operation on routes serving smaller Greek airports. In 1972 Olympic turned to the important Greece-Australia market, beginning Boeing 707-320 operations between Athens and Sydney twice a week via Bangkok and Singapore. Olympic then acquired 7 Boeing 720-051B aircraft, a medium-range derivative of the Boeing 707, from Northwest Airlines. The airline also entered the wide-body era by purchasing 2 new Boeing 747-200s. OA even showed interest in the BAC or copyright Ross Partiel Concorde supersonic airliner and, on January 5, 1973, a Concorde landed at Athens Heraklion Airport to give a demonstration. Post-Onassis era. On January 22, 1973, an incident occurred that dramatically changed the future of OA. The death of Aristotle Onassis' son, Alexander, in a plane crash came as a shock to the Greek people and a new phase began for Olympic Airways. A few months later, Onassis sold all of the OA shares to the Greek state and he died shortly afterward. In 1976, under state management, OA purchased 11 Boeing 737-200 jet aircraft and created Olympic Catering, which served both OA and foreign airlines. In 1977, in a cost-cutting effort, OA shut down their Australia route, followed by the Canadian one in 1978, when OA also placed orders for 4 Airbus A300s, plus 4 options. In 1984, 3 more B747-200 aircraft were purchased from Singapore Airlines, and the Canada and Australia routes were reopened. A new Olympic Airways cargo division was created by converting the Boeing 707-320 City of Lindos, but the plans were soon abandoned. In 1986, there were strikes at OA, and financial losses mounted. The company faced serious financial trouble from the 1980s on, mostly because of management problems. Greek politicians and their families traveled for free or token amounts on the airline. Successive Greek governments also made Olympic carry the press at a 97% discount. Olympic Air Tours was created as a subsidiary of OA, which issued tickets not only for OA, but for other airlines as well. Very soon, Olympic Air Tours was renamed Macedonian Airlines and re-established as a charter flight company. In 1990 a route to Tokyo via Bangkok was launched but Olympic was soon forced to shut it down, despite very high load factors. Olympic purchased 7 Boeing 737-400 aircraft in 1991, as well as the advanced version of the A300, the A300-600R. Due to the rising losses and debts, the government decided to formulate a restructuring program in which all debts were erased. This program, as well as all the plans that followed, failed. A few years later, in an attempt to make OA profitable, management was given to a subsidiary of British Airways, Speedwing. The result was even larger debts and rising losses. In 1999, Olympic purchased 4 Airbus A340-313X aircraft, to replace the aging B747-200. Olympic Airways to Olympic Airlines. By December 2003, the Olympic Airways group of companies owned Olympic Airways, Olympic Aviation, Macedonian Airlines, Galileo Hellas, Olympic Fuel Company, and Olympic Interplane Company. Olympic Catering had been sold a few months earlier. A company formed in the 80s called Olympic Air Tours had already been transformed into Macedonian Airlines. Very soon the losses became excessive, so in 2003 the government restructured the Olympic Airways group of companies. The subsidiary, Macedonian Airlines SA, was renamed Olympic Airlines SA and took over the flight operations of Olympic Airways, erasing at the same time all of the airline's debts. The remaining group companies, except for Olympic Aviation, merged and formed a new company, called Olympic Airways Services SA in December 2004. The Greek government decided to privatize Olympic Airlines, but the sale process ended in failure as none of the buyers were eager to repay the Greek state almost €700 million in state aid, which was later declared illegal by the European Commission in December 2005. In 2005, the Greek government looked for potential buyers to privatize OA. In April of that year, a short list of potential buyers was submitted that included Aegean Airlines, German LCC DBA and a Greek-American consortium called Olympic Investors. Shortly afterwards Aegean Airlines pulled out, followed by DBA. In September 2005, the Greek government signed a non-binding agreement with Olympic Investors to buy the airline. In an interview, Olympic Investors stated that they were backed by York Capital with $6.5 billion and assured that OA's workers would not lose their jobs. They stated that OA should continue to operate as an integrated company and that they were not interested in buying just parts of OA. By the end of the year, the offer fell through because the huge fine imposed on the airline by the European Commission had not been dealt with. According to Greek media, the government planned to relaunch the company in late 2006. The code name for the project was Pantheon Airways. In June 2006, Greek media reported that Sabre Aviation Consulting Services was contracted by the Greek government to find investors and develop a business plan for an airline to replace Olympic Airlines, aiming to begin operations in autumn 2006. Under this plan the government would be a minority shareholder of the new carrier, which would be run as a private airline. The planned relaunch date passed without anything happening, and the plan was temporarily frozen. In 2006 OA was thrown a lifeline, when the courts ordered Greece to repay them almost €564 million owed to the airline. The money was owed to OA from legally subsidized routes to Greek islands and costs of the relocation to the new airport. The money would be used to pay back part of the state aid declared illegal by the European Commission in December 2005. Olympic Airlines redesigned their website to introduce their e-ticket service, launched on July 31, 2007, in response to the surge of online booking and online check-ins. The e-ticket service introduction by Electronic Data Systems meant Olympic abolished their old Hermes booking system, which had served the company for more than 2 decades. As of November 2007, the e-ticket service is available on all European and international routes, and on 19 of the airline's 37 domestic routes. On September 12, 2007, the Luxembourg-based EU court ruled that Olympic should repay an amount of money less than what the EU Commission had ordered. This amount included unpaid taxes on fuel and spare parts, as well as unpaid fees to Athens International Airport. The new amount owed by Olympic was €130 million, as compared with the original €160 million. On that same day Olympic Investors, the Greek-American consortium that was interested in buying Olympic in 2005, stated renewed interest in buying the airline. In November 2007, Irish airline Ryanair filed a suit with the European Commission, saying that they had not looked into their claims that Olympic had not paid back their debt. On December 1, 2007, Transport Minister Kostas Hatzidakis announced that the entire Olympic Airways group debts amounted to €2 billion, and that the airline in its present form and size would cease existing in 2008. This was deemed to be the only way for the European Commission to write off the company's debts to the Greek public sector. He stated that Athens was under more pressure to recover the money Olympic owed, because of the Ryanair lawsuit. Despite all predictions, traffic for Olympic in 2007 increased to a total of 5,977,104 passengers compared to approximately 5,500,000 passengers in 2006. It is estimated that OA earned approximately €780 million in 2007, 500 of which came from international flights. However, in 2008, due to lack of aircraft, Olympic Airlines cancelled or merged a significant number of flights, about 6,000 according to their union. Olympic Airlines officials have declared that this is not the major problem, since after all the income reduction is only for €5 million compared to the initial budget plan. Olympic Airlines to Olympic Air. On March 6, 2009, Development Minister Kostas Hatzidakis announced the sale of the flight operations and the technical base companies to MIG. As a result, after 35 years of state control and 10 years of failed sales attempts, Olympic will once again become a private corporation. The new owners will secure approximately 5,000 of the 8,500 jobs of the group. On September 28, 2009, Olympic Airlines ceased to fly to most of their 69 destinations, maintaining flights to Tel Aviv, Beirut, Cairo and all public service obligation routes within Greece, until the Ministry for Transport and Communications redistributed the routes in late November, when Olympic Airlines entered liquidation. Existing passengers were accommodated on other airlines. Employees of the old company that were in destinations no longer served may have been affected. The last Olympic Airlines flight was Flight 424 from Toronto via Montreal, landing at 11:10 on September 29, 2009 at the Athens International Airport. Olympic Air took over the rest of the operations on September 29, 2009, and their first flight was on October 1, 2009 at 6:20, leaving the Athens International Airport and heading to Thessaloniki Macedonia Airport. Destinations. Before their demise in 2009, Olympic Airlines flew to 37 domestic and 32 international destinations throughout 23 countries. Fleet. Former fleet. Olympic Airlines has previously operated the following aircraft, code-share agreements. Olympic Airlines had the following code-share agreements: Cyprus Airways connected Athens and Thessaloniki with Larnaca and Athens with Paphos, Air Malta connects Athens with Malta, Czech Airlines connected Athens and Thessaloniki with Prague, Egypt Air connected Athens with Alexandria, Kuwait Airways connected Athens with Kuwait. Corporate design, logo. The first logo of the airline was a white eagle, bearing a resemblance to a propeller, featuring 5 rings and the name Olympic. Just 2 years after the first flight, Onassis asked his associates to design a new logo and the colored rings were created. Onassis wanted to copy the 5 colored rings of the Olympic emblem, but the International Olympic Committee claimed the rights to the emblem, so a new, 6-ring logo was introduced. The first 5 rings stand for the 5 continents, while the 6th stands for Greece. Colors used were yellow, red, blue and white. The new logo for Olympic Air was selected from among 3 proposals by an online vote which was open until July 5, 2009 on OALGO-GR. All proposals were expected to keep the 6 circles and to modernize the existing logo. The logo that was finally selected is a bevel version of the existing logo and font, with the exception that green has replaced the light blue on some circles. Green along with blue is one of MIG's corporate colors and was thus also used per the request of MIG on the new uniforms too. The Olympic name came about as a result of Onassis' passion for ancient Greece. Many of his companies carried the Olympic name, such as Olympic Maritime. He followed the same naming pattern for his ships. According to OA regulations, all male flight attendants must wear a black tie, thus paying tribute to the late Alexander Onassis. Uniforms for OA flight attendants were created by famous fashion designers. The first uniform was designed by Jean Desses in 1957, followed by uniforms designed by Coco Chanel, Pierre Cardin, Giannis Tsaklinis, Raoul Esteve, Billy Bow, Aspasia Gerald, Makis Tselios and Artisti Italiani. Olympic and popular culture. In the film For Your Eyes Only, James Bond calls Miss Moneypenny to book a ticket with Olympic to Madrid. A sunglass collection by Paul Frank Sunik is called Olympic Airways. Olympic Airways is the fourth and last single from the album Antidotes by Foals. Incidents and accidents. October 29, 1959, a Douglas DC-3 crashed in the locality of Kleitais, on Mount Parnitha, near Athens, Greece. All 15 passengers and all 3 crew members perished. It was reported that one of the wings was detached from the plane. August 16, 1969, a Douglas DC-3 was hijacked on a domestic flight from Heraklion International Airport, Athens to Heraklion Airport. The aircraft, possibly registered SXBBF, landed at Valona. December 8, 1969, Olympic Airways Flight 954 crashed near Karatia, 21 miles southeast of Athens, Greece. All 85 passengers and all 5 crew members were killed. February 18, 1972, an Olympic aviation Learjet crashed off the coast of Monte Carlo. Both crew members were killed. October 21, 1972, an AMCYS-11 crashed off the coast of Voula, Athens, about 3 miles south of Athens Heraklion Airport, operating a flight from the island of Corfu to Athens, in a thunderstorm. 36 passengers and the co-pilot drowned, while 16 passengers and the remaining 3 crew members were rescued. November 23, 1976, Olympic Airways Flight 830 and NAMCYS-11 crashed on Mount Metaxas, outside the village of Servia, near Kozani, Greece. All 46 passengers and 4 crew members perished. One of the plane's wings is still on the site, near a small church built in memory of the victims. January 4, 1998, a passenger on Olympic Airways Flight 417 died of an allergic reaction to cigarette smoke when a flight attendant, against policy, refused to change his seat. The airline banned all smoking from April 15, 2001. The wife of the deceased, Rubina Hussain, won a recompensation of $1.4 million at a lawsuit before a U.S. court. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld that decision. Bibliography, Gradage, Jennifer, The Douglas DC-1, DC-2, DC-3, The First 70 Years, 2006, Air Britain Limited, ISBN 0-85130-332-3. Roach, J. and Eastwood A.B., Piston-Engined Airliner Production List, 2007, The Aviation Hobby Shop, ISBN none. References. External links, Olympic Airlines, Olympic Airways.